Danielle, thank you for coming on. This is kind of exciting. We've gotten to know each other the last few months, but you've been all over the place. You started your own business, but you have your own business. You're a realtor as well as now you own your own clothing line. How did all of that get started?
Yeah, so 7 years ago, I started Pieces to Pieces, which is my handmade accessory company. And just kind of came about because I had a newborn and was single, and I didn't know how to, I guess, do life with that, and figure out how to work. And I didn't want to put her in daycare. So I just started sewing headbands and blew up on Instagram and quickly started an Etsy store. And then from there, got my own website and we started to sell at festivals and markets. And we also do wholesale.
And that's really one of the things that comes out of this is you deciding at some point to take that risk. A lot of people have great ideas. A lot of people can decide that their ideas are, fashionable, but they never actually take the risk. And that risk isn't just whether or not people like it, but the financial risk and really
Mm.
that kind of load. What was the, I guess, the starting point for you to decide that it was worth the risk?
I really had nothing to lose anymore. I was brand new to Washington State. I had moved out here with my daughter's dad and we were together, and I left my job in property management, and it was my only choice. And I'm thankful for it. Was a terrible place to feel like you were in at the time, but I'm so thankful for it because I don't know if I would have ever made the leap if I wasn't left with only that choice. And it was just so apparent to me as soon as I started, you know, offering, just presenting what I had out there, to social media, that people loved it and that I could do it. I remember the first day I posted a couple headbands and they all sold out. And then I don't know, it was very empowering. So it wasn't actually a conscious choice. I was just kind of in a position where I either had to go this way or that way. And I'm glad I chose the path I did.
And looking back on it, even though that's been 7 years, it kind of gets to be a blur, doesn't it? After a while, that you've done so
Oh my
much.
gosh. Oh my gosh. Yes, totally. It's kind of mind blowing. 7 years, it sounds like a long time, but it doesn't feel like a long time at all. And I'm always just surprised to see how far we've come.
So when you decided to launch this company, what did you try to look at in terms of brand name and try to image? I mean, yes, you had headbands, but that has nothing to do with what your company name is, right? Pieces to pieces.
Yeah. So the name Pieces to Pieces came about 2 or 3 years prior to actually ever turning into a headband business. I was hanging out with friends one night and kind of laying on the floor. I think I might have had a few drinks, or something like that. But all of a sudden, I came up with the name and I said, that name is so good. And a little backstory is I'm from a small town in Maryland, very far away from Washington State. I know in Washington State, it's cool to be a hippie or, all of that stuff. Where I'm from, that stuff's not cool. And I was known as kind of the flower child that always made homemade headbands and peace signs and, vintage clothes before it was cool. Um, so anyway, so I came up with a name in Arizona and I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's like my life story, like taking broken pieces and turning into something whole. And I guess I was thinking maybe I would do a blog with it, but I'm not a good writer, nor do I like writing. So I just took out the domain and I bought every version of Pieces to Pieces, .com, .org, .web. And when I started making the headbands, it was just so clear that's what it needed to be. And a lot of people see the brand name as taking like scraps of fabric and making something, whole and that you can wear. And that's a great analogy too. It's kind of, it's as deep as you want it to go, I guess, with that whole meaning.
But you also just talked about something that's important when you're launching your own business, and that's getting as many versions of the domain name, as many versions of the other name.
Hmm.
any kind of copyright, any kind of stuff. A lot of people just kind of throw it to the mix, and then they find themselves halfway through where they have some troll or some person that's kind of pirated half of their brand. Is that really something that's, you know, kind of been important to you, is to make sure that if somebody co-ops your brand, you can go after them and say, hey, look, I've got every type of control there is, to make sure that when people buy Pieces to Pieces, they know they're buying from you, not anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a battle I had a lot in the beginning. My brand name, we actually couldn't trademark it. Some place in China has that name or something, but we couldn't trademark it because it wasn't original. But we have it branded, I guess. I forget what it is. I paid for something to have it as, you know, the only business name. I'm sorry, I'm not real great with those exact words, but the biggest thing for me was I had so many copycats. And I know headbands aren't original, but people literally took my exact picture of like me or my child wearing the product and posted it on like Alibaba or Etsy. And it was my product, but then I don't know what the hell people got when they bought it. You know, obviously wasn't for me. So we had a lot of copycats that way. But as far as domains go, I don't think that it's even worth it to start a brand under a name if you do not own the website, if you cannot get the Instagram handle, cannot get the Facebook page. You know, to me, that's not even worth going with a name unless you have a lot of money to fight and buy the name that you want. I mean, I think it's kind of silly. One place I messed up with it was the Facebook page we had. That place in China owns Pieces to Pieces, the Facebook page. So we're Pieces to Pieces boutique, I think. And that always gets on my nerves.
But, you know, I mean, when you look at your product line in general, you grew from one headband to now what you have. What were some of the decisions that you made to expand that line and try to make sure it was correct?
Yeah. So I actually, when I started, I made about 8 different patterns of headbands. When I mean patterns, like different styles, and then within those styles, we had multiple colors and prints. And I realized that wasn't a sustainable business plan at all. So we actually went back and we made one headband really amazing and really awesome. And I got down all of the, you know, I had all the numbers crunched and I had it all very streamlined, and we instead relaunched with just one headband again. You know, in 2015 I did this, and then over time all the other headbands that I originally started with, I went back and I fine tuned them and made sure they were as awesome, as durable, as unique as we could, and then relaunched them over time. So that's a lot different than some other companies. You know, we didn't, when we really started doing online sales, we kind of just focused on one at a time. And then as our fan base grew bigger, then we launched a new product so people bought it.
But this is also comes to the idea of building a community. I think some people just try to, you know, the second that they have something, they immediately just try to throw up and try to get a community. It's a little harder than that, isn't it? A little harder to
Oh,
sustain as well.
absolutely. Yeah. I don't know how new businesses do it anymore. I mean, um, 7 years ago, Instagram and Facebook was the wild, wild west. You know, when you posted something, everyone that followed you saw it. You didn't have to pay anything. But it also meant you needed to be, you know, you needed to be posting something that people connected to you with. So a lot of people still follow me that saw me, you know, with a baby sewing. I have so many old videos on my Facebook of me sewing with Emery behind me as a toddler playing with my hair, and I'm just sewing headbands. And most of my following came from the early stages of that. And then, you know, just talking about real day-to-day stuff. And through that, we've developed a Facebook group community, which is real tight-knit, and a local community too.
And, you know, some of your brand actually is more about empowering professional women, more than
Yeah,
just, you know,
absolutely.
just than, hey, we're selling you headbands. How did
Mhm.
it kind of come to that? Because I'm not sure that was probably the original intent.
I think Pieces to Pieces is so like tied to my personal growth. And I think it kind of evolved as I evolved. Um, Originally, I think it was just supposed to be like bohemian headbands that you could match your baby with. But as and I was identifying more as like a mom. And as Emery grew and as I did a lot of self work, I kind of started seeing myself as a more powerful woman and wanting to feel more empowered. And I just kind of started projecting that out there. And I think it attracted, that customer base. And, we sell to a lot of really badass women in business right now. And a lot of people stock our product all over the world too. And they're, in other small businesses. It's pretty cool.
Is that one of the messages that you would have, though, about growing organically? It doesn't seem forced, like you're saying, hey, these are just, this is the brand for professional women. It's something that professional women buy, and it's something they engage with, but they don't feel compelled like you're not a professional if you don't buy it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really just, I kind of always seen it. Our tagline is be you, be free. And whatever that is for you, we just want you to be yourself and be the best version of you. We always kind of refer to these with our emojis and our branding as like your crown, and it's more just about being confident and, paving your own way and just kind of going after whatever you want. And also looking good.
So how have you shaped your brand effectively? I mean, like to make sure that it's continually your brand.
I never have stepped away from it, I guess. I have been I've been a part of the whole branding we just went through a rebrand this past year and I was a part of it. I didn't let anyone else do it besides my graphic designer. Even down to our designs. A lot of people don't know I still hand design everything. I hand pick all my fabrics and I still run all of our main social media accounts. So I never gave that up. And that was kind of how I was able to, I guess, still keep, myself in it. I did try from time to time to hire someone to be that voice so I could step away a little bit, but it never really worked. It's funny how people didn't keep following or they stopped buying as soon as I took my face away or my voice away. People didn't identify with the brand anymore. It's so like tightly woven into my life.
Part of that also is the idea I'd mentioned to you offline that you wearing the headband made me feel that, you were really kind of endorsing it. That, it wasn't just, I'm just throwing out a headband, but it's something that I feel myself, I could see myself wearing, therefore other women would wear it. I mean, is that kind of the identifier at a certain point?
Yeah, I think people will definitely know me as the headband lady. I actually, when I go out in town where we sell locally, I sometimes don't wear them. I wear a hat so people don't point at me and, say, hey, Danielle, just when I'm trying to get groceries. But yeah, wearing it yourself, I mean, you're your biggest, billboard. If you're not going to wear it, why would anyone else do it?
So you mentioned the fact that, you design all of your own headbands. Do your customers after a while direct you or do you direct them as to what is fashionable, what they should be looking at?
I take feedback, and everyone does not. I mean, I get a lot of messages and we also get a lot of people telling us what we should and what we shouldn't make. One thing I've always done is I've always just stuck with my plan and what I wanted to do, but occasionally I'll throw in, some colors or prints that people are asking for. But for the most part, I've been pretty authentic with the brand and keeping it on track to what I envision. I try not to play into too many fads and stuff. Of course, headbands have in general gotten more popular in the last 2 years, which has been, good for the brand. But we've been kind of making them this way for 7 years now. So I do take people's feedback and opinions, but I don't let it sway me too much unless it's, I can see it, I guess, going along with our brand.
Some of it, though, is the identification of what your brand is and what
Mm-hmm.
your brand isn't. You won a contest to go into the mall for a few months. You experienced that. And, it's a business like anything else. But what did that teach you about retail compared to, not in retail in terms of servicing your product and your clients?
Yeah, well, that was a unique experience. I I think retail's kind of dying, uh, especially big retail. And we weren't big retail, we were just a small boutique. But I can't tell you how many of my customers kept telling me like, "Hey, we don't ever go to the mall, but we're coming here for you." And it was interesting. I'm I don't know. I guess it's kind of cool that people are flipping more to small business and buying online. That's really cool. But it is also kind of sad to see the boutiques and the stores fade away. It's a new time for sure. So I think it was really good for my customers to be able to touch and feel our items, but I don't know if it was really that great for the business in the long run. But it was cool to visually see it.
But you also had the experience of looking at labor hours and seeing exactly what that's like for
Mhm.
your industry and whether or not that coalesces around it. Does it even make sense to be open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. like it would have been in maybe the 1950s when there wasn't all of these other items around?
No, I don't think it makes sense at all. I think it life is just so different. It's so different. It didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense from financial standpoint. It didn't. My girls ended up sitting for a good amount of the day without sales.
When it comes to, those types of, things that you do more events now. You do them where it's
Yeah.
like, well, until recently, of course, but
Yeah.
but it's like Friday nights, Saturday nights, those types of things.
Mhm.
Do those actually build more of a community and more sales for your product in a
Oh,
smaller amount of time?
absolutely. Oh, oh yeah, very low overhead. You're normally going directly to your customer, those people that like to support small business, handmade stuff. They're right there. They get to meet you, they get to meet your staff, they get to see you wearing your product, they get to touch and feel it. And I think everyone kind of wins. And then you can also support other small business and other makers, other artists. It's just really good.
So you have it now in a warehouse experience. Is that
Mhm.
really what it should be like for a type of retail that you do in the boutique side, rather than retail to where anybody can randomly walk in, to where it has to be you have to have an event, you have to have a ticket, you have to have something.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the way to go these days. I think you got to get on people's schedule. Life is really fast, and when they have a specific date and time that they have to get something or get access to something, I think it's a really smart business move. I also just think that people aren't really out joy shopping as much anymore. So having staff or having yourself, at a retail store for 10, 12 hours a day is just not worth it. Condensing it into 3 or 4 hour periods works really well for us. Also, just people are doing so many more sales on Facebook and Instagram Live. It's crazy. I don't even maximize the use how much I could sell on there.
Well, and that also comes into some of the other things you learned about doing this. I'm sure
Mhm.
you learned about taxation. You learned about the different
Yeah.
taxes, and everyone will kind of like go, "Oh, why are taxes aren't that sexy?" But let's be honest, when you are making a headband, you start to realize how much what you sell it for, and what it actually,
Hmm.
goes. What did you kind of learn from that, especially even from whether it's accounting, whether it's all of the other stuff of making sure that you were right with both the state and feds, but you actually made some money at this?
Yeah. So you always will pay more in taxes than what you think. I learned that the hard way. And know your numbers. You have to keep crunching them as you're launching new products and trying new ways to market and new places to sell.
What does it come down to in terms of overhead that you have to factor in order to make money at a product, that you're selling?
Mhm.
Is it like
Could you?
22%, 25%? What I mean, how much more do you have to make sure that you buffer in order
I
to make
would
sure
say
you're not?
probably like 25%, minimum.
Yeah. And that kind of comes insane because after a while, sometimes, and I don't know if it happens with your boutique product, but Do you have to almost explain price increases to the customer because they don't understand?
You do. We actually just increased our prices for the first time in 7 years. And that was a couple dollar difference on each product. And it was really hard. I was surprised at how no one even blinked an eye about it. But I had to explain it to I think the hardest people was to explain to were actually my employees, because they were so used to selling it for, $12. Now they're selling it for 14. And that seemed so big in their mind. But then when they saw people were just still rapid fire buying them, it didn't matter. But I didn't realize the reason why we had the price increase was because my expenses increased exponentially. So trying to offset that, but I think for the most part, people understand. And if they follow you and they see that you're an honest business person, they, will support you through those changes.
Does it also help to limit your inventory, limit the things that you sell to where
Mhm.
you don't have a glut of it? I'm not saying that you
Oh,
hold
yeah.
back, but you've got to make sure that otherwise you're not going to get the amount of money you think you're going to get.
Absolutely. You can over expand for sure. I've had to many times scale back, and you'll actually make more profit too if you mass produce a smaller amount of things and like mass sell a smaller amount of things versus being stretched out over many SKUs, which I use SKUs as like the style and print that we have. And that was another thing when we went into retail that, you know, that's a whole different ballgame, because we started bringing in some items that we didn't make. And so the original price of those is a lot higher than if you were making it. And then your profit margin's a lot slimmer. So learning how to market items that weren't even yours just kind of stretches you even more. So I kind of see during this COVID thing, it's given me a lot of time to have those come to Jesus meetings with my brand and like look at it. And I think we're probably just going to go back to what we do best and streamline and, mass produce. Obviously, we're pivoting a little bit because of coronavirus, but yeah.
And that's one thing that kind of comes out of this when you're yeah, I guess you're at home, you still have the ability to sell, you still have the ability
Mhm.
to do things, but you also do have to take into consideration other people's lives because everyone's livelihood is almost being
Mhm.
thrown upside down, correct? So how do
Yeah.
you do flash sales at the same time when nobody really has any money and you don't want to bleed your customer?
Well, I know, talk about ethical marketing, that's huge right now, and making sure we stay in a place of um I guess being compassionate and empathetic versus buy this, buy that, buy this, and kind of see, what your client or your audience actually needs from you at the time. Sometimes that's words of encouragement and not a headband, and learning how to do that. So we've been kind of shying away from many flash sales, or really no one's even received an email from me about any sales or anything. And I've gotten other emails from other brands, and I'm not offended by them, but I could imagine if I lost my job this in the past 2 weeks, or I had an ill loved one, that would probably be the last thing I wanted to read at the moment. So just trying to come at this from a place of, I guess, compassion, with your marketing. And obviously because of this, we know headbands aren't a necessity to people. And when things aren't a necessity, those are normally the first things to go when you're having to really buckle down with your finances and your lifestyle. So we're obviously going to be doing some changes. I'm lucky that my community has really kind of gathered around me, and our online sales have actually been up with very little marketing. But I see that as being like the up before things kind of go a little bit more south. I'm not in denial about that, but yeah, we're just gonna have to pivot. I think we're gonna start doing the face masks and modifying our headbands so they can be worn in the healthcare industry to help people with their disposable masks. So we're just gonna see how we can be of need there and just change your plan a little bit.
And this is where you mentioned the word plan several times. When you
Mhm.
launched, did you really have a plan or did you have
No,
an
no,
idea? Like people spend a lot of
it's
times
just
on
an
business
idea.
planning and they rarely hit the street with them. Did you find that it
Mhm.
was better to kind of learn from your audience and learn what they wanted rather than
Mhm.
just kind of, write it down on a piece of paper?
Yeah, I don't know if I fully believe in long-term business plans. I like business goals, and I 100% recommend getting the taxes and the accounting stuff squared away before you collect any type of money. Those are the things that like I if that's part of your business plan, that should be your main focus. But as far as like the brand evolving, I think setting goals for yourself and goals for the brand are good, but I think you need to be fluid. I think you need to learn how to ride those waves a bit because it is going to change a lot. You have to change with the seasons, you have to change with the economy, you have to change with the trends and the styles if you're in, the fashion world. And I'm great at adapting at all areas of my life, and I think that's been one of my greatest strengths with owning this type of business.
So when you're talking to young entrepreneurs, especially females
Mhm,
that are maybe they have a child, maybe they have the partner in their life or they
mhm.
don't. I mean, what are some of the things that you kind of give them in terms of advice?
To really love your idea, to really, really love it. I've always and to love your business, and obviously I think it depends on the type of business they're in, but I know with pieces to pieces, it's been a huge part of my life and my passion. And I've always kind of seen it as like a separate entity, kind of similar to, you know, maybe a little person, when it was first born into life, it was a baby and it needed me constantly. And, it was growing and I'm trying to shape it and figure out who pieces to pieces is going to be. And then, they start crawling and walking and they need you a little less, but then you still have to turn them into, who they're supposed to be. And I always kind of said when Emery went to kindergarten was when I started in real estate again because hey, she's going, pieces to pieces going to school because we had our first like employee. So I don't know, I guess just kind of seeing it as that and constantly knowing that you need to love it and constantly shape it. There's probably never going to be a day that you're going to be able to just hire it all out, and still be a part of you, I guess. I know. I don't know if that was exactly the answer you were looking for, but
Well, I kept waiting for you to tell me that when, the company's about 14, it'll tell you that you didn't do anything right and blame you for all of its problems and not want to hang out with you because you're uncool, right?
oh man, well, we haven't gotten there yet, but I mean, hey, maybe when it's 14, no one will be wearing headbands by then. So who knows? Maybe we'll totally have to pivot at that point. But
So you
yeah.
you mentioned the fact that you're also in real estate, and this is one of the other things that I'm always excited about is to hear people with multiple
Mhm.
revenue streams, and that's
Yes.
because it also allows you to not feed off of the business as you're making it grow. Is that
Hmm.
kind of a strategic move of not trying to make your headband business have to, pay for your house payment?
Hmm. Absolutely. I cannot even imagine how scary that would be at this moment going through this coronavirus if I was only dependent on one stream of income. I mean, that's really scary. Um, you can be as successful as you want, but as soon as that stops, I mean, you have nothing else. So I'm super happy I went into real estate when I did. And I also have some investment streams of income as well that have served me well. And I'm very thankful I set those up. But yeah, just learning how to operate two businesses is really hard, but I think it's worth it.
Well, fantastic stuff. Danielle, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me.